everyone. This is a different setup. I'm talking, for those of you who are watching the video version on Spotify or on YouTube, I'm looking directly at the camera and I'm in our office in the basement. This is because though our living room is cuter than our basement, it was a lot to set up the whole recording system in the living room once a week. I mean, it really wasn't that big of a deal, but I wanted to be able to just sit down and record whenever I had the time instead of relying on having that system or the whole, instead of having the scene set up. What am I trying to say? Instead of having this, because it's not a set, it's our living room. Anyway, I just thought this would be more efficient long term. Because right now, I'm just able to sit down and record, and I think it'll be a lot easier. And hopefully, see, the chair that I'm in is usually back here, for those of you who can see me. So hopefully I'll make this a little cuter in the future. But for now, we're just sitting in this chair, squishmallow in my lap. First, I just wanted to start off this episode by saying thank you. One, from just being patient with me and uploading the next episode. I know a week late isn't that big of a deal, but I really, again, my goal for this year is to be consistent with this. So I appreciate the patience. And also thank you for such a warm and positive response about my last episode. It was really difficult to record. Surprisingly for me, I talk about OCD pretty frequently online and in person. And for some reason, recounting those events, which I had already done in therapy and I had processed most of it, I had thought, but for some reason, recounting it in podcast form and it going out online, it was a lot for me. And so I think I needed the week off to kind of recover from sharing about something that was really vulnerable. And I have just gotten the kindest, most encouraging messages from all of you about OCD, about what I shared, about your own experiences or the experiences of someone you love, and a lot about destigmatizing OCD and how what I shared helped you see OCD in a more accurate light, which honestly is the goal of sharing about mental illness in general, is to make you feel less alone or help you feel less alone and to portray a real human picture of what OCD in this instance is like. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that because it really meant a lot to me. And I feel like I experienced both online and in person a lot of confirmation that I should continue sharing about OCD and mental health and mental illness, which, it's why I started the podcast. But it was really cool to, I don't know, I just felt like it's nice to receive encouragement like that because it really helps me keep going and feel like I'm doing the right thing and am in the right spot in my life and in my work. And that's something that I really value. So thank you so much for all your sweet and vulnerable messages. Really quick, if you are listening or watching this on YouTube, if I look over here to the right, it's because this is where I can see myself and I'm just checking to make sure I'm still in focus. Also, I don't know if you can see, but my glasses are smushed. I don't know what happened. I need to go to Warby Parker or something to see if they can adjust the center because it's just so crooked now. But anyway, thank you so much. And I am looking forward to diving into more of these topics in the future. And thank you to everyone who responded to my stories the other day about deconstruction. I want to do an episode on that. But before I did, it was important for me to know like the varying experiences and opinions of you guys before I like dove into the topic, because it's such a complex thing. And I don't know, this is just really cool. You guys are so open and vulnerable and willing to discuss things, and it's just the best. I feel so grateful that I get to be a part of it. It's a privilege to initiate it, and yeah. Today is Valentine's Day when I'm recording this episode, and again, if you can see the camera footage, I am wearing an embroidered shirt with a heart that says Moose, which is my dog's name, as you know, in the middle. And I got this shirt from my friend Megan, who is kind of the inspiration for this episode. She is a crafty gal. I want to have her on the podcast, as I've already told her a million times, because I just think you guys would love her. But she's a really, really close, dear friend of mine, and she's so crafty and creative and loves to make things, including the shirt. She made me and our little like girl gang all handmade shirts with our dog's name in the center of them. And I just love her perspective on creativity. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I've been learning a lot about creativity over the last few years. And what sparked me to want to share about it on the podcast is something that Megan said to me when we were hanging out one time. We were in a coffee shop, and Megan is just one of those friends that I can sit with in complete silence and just like we're just be creative together and enjoy each other's company, and there's no awkwardness or pressure, and it's something I really cherish. And when we were hanging out at this coffee shop and I was working on some stuff and so was she just started saying how she just wanted to make things, and she found so much joy in simply making things and sharing them with others, whatever that looked like, whether that be online, whether that be through, hand delivering homemade shirts to her friends, just whatever it was. She's also amazing at making things, but just that simple sentence of I just want to make things really inspired me, because whenever I started sharing stuff on Instagram, that was my full motivation behind what I was doing, is I was making things and I just wanted to make things and share them. And I think that's what content creation used to be in its purest form. And I've been trying to get back to that pure form of making things and expressing myself. And I wanted to kind of verbally process / talk about my own timeline with creativity and my relationship with it, but also just thoughts on how it has evolved with online culture. And yeah, this truly is just, like the episode says, just my thoughts on creativity and what I've been thinking about recently. I always have used art as a way to process emotions and pain, or to regulate my emotions and pain, whether that be through like books or writing or songwriting or music, singing, dancing, painting, photography, videography, illustrating, whatever that is. I feel like creativity has always been a very organic pursuit in my life. I come from a very creative family. My dad is a painter and sculptor, and other members of my family are musicians and writers and artists. And I feel like it's very cliche to say it, but it really feels like creativity is in my DNA. Like a part of me and how I feel like God created me is to love others and love Him through creativity. And I've always wanted to use what I made for impact, because I've always had this like passion for creativity and passion for like advocacy and change, specifically with mental health and mental illness and 1,000 other things. But I feel like that's where my spark for advocacy began, with a company called To Write Love on Our Arms, specifically when I discovered them in high school. And that whole organization opened my vision to a lot of creators online and writers and people I looked up to who were making practical change with what they were creating. And in high school and early college, it's funny to still to this day to be known online for the Enneagram and for, I don't know, just all of the various things I'm quote unquote known for now, because I wanted to be a singer-songwriter and I wanted to be a worship leader back in the day, and I wanted to make music. And I thought that was going to be my profession and how I was going to like show up in the world vocationally. And so in high school and early college, I started this nonprofit. It's like official, but so unofficial at the same time, because I truly had no idea what I was doing. But I forgot who it was, but there was someone who created, what's his name? I need to remember his name. He's a photographer in Nashville. But he wanted to create this thing called the Purpose Hotel, where when you stayed at the hotel, every single room would have artisan goods from people in poverty. The Purpose Hotel was a way for people in poverty to sell things that they were creating and making and provide a pathway of income for them. And the whole idea of it was so sustainable and I think inventive and ahead of its time. And like when you booked a room at this hotel and you were staying in it, like just by existing and being there, you were fueling an actual person's income so that they could get out of really awful situations. And when I discovered this idea, I was like, I wonder if I could do that with songwriting. And so I created this very unofficial nonprofit called Songs with a Purpose. And I started this organization to help other organizations and just individuals in general, like process what they were going through a song that was specifically for them. And I did that for a couple years, and it provided me with so much joy. I had my own little songwriting and recording setup at my house. I did all of it myself. I did the marketing myself. I recorded myself. I wrote the songs myself. Like it was completely fueled by me. And I feel like I haven't been able to share that since actually having a platform, because I feel like though it is crazy that I went very like nichely viral, I have been putting things online for a while. It's just not in the category I ended up in. Anyway, with that, like being creative in that way for the purpose of serving and helping and expressing has always been, I think, my dream job. And it wasn't until like 2018, 2019, where I got married and I moved out for the first time and I became immersed in adulthood, really, that this pressure to monetize my creativity, even from myself, like I really wasn't experiencing pressure from Noah or anyone in my life. It was mostly me and what I was observing online. And I don't know, like just that. Honestly, I think even in 2018 and 2019, hustle culture was much more prevalent and romanticized. And I started feeling like creativity was my way to make money as an adult. And so that is what kind of introduced me into this world of marketing and social media in a corporate office setting. And I think the combination of trying to fit into this box of business professional, marketing professional with some abusive, toxic leadership I was under in the past, and also being neurodivergent and having OCD led to a massive burnout. When I was like writing down my thoughts for recording this, I just got this image of like someone squeezing toothpaste or like a paint tube as hard as they could until it's dry. And I feel like that's what happened to me. Not just because of society, but even because of my own pressure that I was putting on myself. It was just this like, though I was experiencing a lot of milestones and dreams coming true that I would never, ever replace, you don't know, I guess, until hindsight, how much you are overworking yourself. And I've been working for a really long time, though I wasn't supporting my family financially at all. I was very, very lucky. I started doing like music professionally at like 10. And from 10 until really 10 years, I was very active in like gospel kids music recordings, or like primarily what I was doing was focused on like with the church. And because I had such a passion and zeal for what I was doing, I feel like I wasn't taught how to slow down or how to protect my mind and my energy as a kid. So I feel like I was kind of nurtured and celebrated because of how much I overworked myself. And by 2019, 2020, really around the release of my first book, is when I just felt so dry. I feel like 2022 was the full year where I really was like completely burnt out from how hard I had pushed myself with my online presence, but also how much I had worked my whole life before I was even like present online. And yeah, again, because I loved sharing what I made, and I still do, like I love sharing, obviously, what I'm making or what's on my mind or what I'm creating. And that's a part of the creative process for me. Again, developing healthy boundaries and protecting my relationship with creativity. It just led me to be squeezed until I had absolutely nothing left. And that's kind of where I've been for a while, like I said, in this place of complete burnout, but having to still have a career because you have to pay bills, you have to make money. But because I'd gotten into this career where I also was monetizing my creativity in other ways, it kind of made me a shell of a person. And I have been working to repair this relationship with creativity back to even like a childlike state even. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, Megan's perspective of just wanting to make things. And that came from such a pure place of expression. And with all of this said, I have been feeling creative again. And I want to add on to all of this context with things that have helped me mend my relationship with creativity, especially in terms of work. The first thing would be finding a hobby, a creative hobby. And when did we first take photos? I think it was 2021 and into 2022. My friend Morgan and I, we weren't even really friends at the beginning. We were, but we weren't. Like now obviously we're very good friends, but we had a conversation one time about how we were both into photography, and Morgan is super amazing at modeling. Like she just knows what face to make. She's just so photogenic. And I have always wanted to like make a good face in a photo. You know what I mean? Like, or just be able to be in a photo and like have a pose and feel good and not like, what am I doing? And Morgan wanted to learn more about photography and cameras, and I'm very amateur/intermediate. But at the time we just kind of like set up a day and we took photos together. And from there kind of sparked these like mini photo shoots that we don't even have that often. We've only had 4, which is crazy. But those photo shoots helped revive my creativity in a profound way because I was using my energy and mind for something that didn't have a deadline, where there was no pressure or rating of performance attached to it. And though I still like to share the photos that I take with Morgan, it's something that I want to protect because whenever I find something I love, it's so easy for me to just like get very, perhaps this may be a little combo of my personality and ADHD, but it's just, I get all consumed in a new hobby or thing that I'm interested in. And it's very difficult for me to like separate myself or remember that like, oh my gosh, I have other things that I'm doing. And there is even still and was a temptation to be like, maybe I can be a photographer and maybe I should do this instead. And I've really come to terms with the fact that I want to share this hobby, but I don't want to monetize it. And I think that's a super important difference to make. And since I've been protecting like our photo shoots even with myself, of like when I take photos of people, like letting it just be something that isn't tied to producing money or like an audience. So that really helped, as well as repairing my relationship with singing and songwriting. This really happened during COVID. I fell back in love with musical theater. I'd always loved it, but had been very ashamed of loving it. I kind of kept it to myself, especially once I got older. Because the people I was around, I so desperately wanted to be cool and like the same music as them and like find artists that they like, that I said I liked, regardless of if I liked it or not. And COVID, when during that time in lockdown, when we were so isolated, I just was like listening to musical theater again. And funny enough, before Rachel Zegler was cast in like West Side Story and whatever, I'm not like other girls and I knew about her before you did moment. So just excuse me. But I was subscribed to her YouTube channel for a long time. And she would post these recordings with someone named Tyler Kappa. And I was subscribed to him as well. And I just would watch. I had watched like videos of them together and just other videos of Tyler's before. But in quarantine, it was like, oh my gosh, I just watched them all the time. And it feels like I got bit by a bug where I was like, I'm going to become a Broadway level singer solely for my own enjoyment. And I want to know that I could kill this specific song, even if no one ever hears me sing it. And that's what I did. And it really helped too with, again, I guess the theme is like I started being creative without monetizing what I was doing. And I was practicing and investing time in photography, but also singing and songwriting again, and like really studying things and becoming better at the craft solely for myself. And that was very healing, and it still is very healing. And I think there's always going to be a part of me that wants to share music, and maybe one day I'll put out a song, who knows? Just because I think I do have this goal of putting out something before I'm 30. Not because I want to be a musician, but just because it's like, I don't know. I love it so much. And again, I love sharing what I make, but just giving myself the space to enjoy the process of learning and creating and singing on my own without involving anyone else. And this all ties into the original statement from Megan and what I experienced when we went to Paris as well. So many artists, like the greatest artists of all time, impressionistic artists, or painters who, Impressionism is my favorite form of art. It's the art I grew up learning about the most from my dad, and I learned about, Renoir and Degas and Monet and all of these amazing painters. And when I got to see all of their works in person, we had like the English audio guide, and we could like listen to the explanations of paintings and what the artist's visions were. And I just was overwhelmed with how like the greatest artists in history were so focused on expressing themselves. And there was one artist that I had never heard of before, but he only had 2 paintings in like all the exhibits we were looking at, and I loved them. But when I listened to the audio of like who this guy was, basically he self-sabotaged himself of like, he became focused on not expression or creativity, but like originality and the perception of his artwork, to the point where he like drove himself mad and couldn't really paint anymore. Whereas when we were listening to audios about Van Gogh, he was like, oh, on my trip to the Louvre, this inspired this and whatever. And it just was so incredible to remember how important expression is in our relationship with creativity, and how expression really can be sustainable and can go a long way. And so from that, I've been asking myself recently, what does it look like to create from a place of expression as opposed to monetization? Because I really believe that, yes, strategy is important, like data is important, sharing things is important. But even when I started posting about the Enneagram, it came from a place of expression and wanting to express myself or vocalize something that I was passionate about. And I think that I guess I should look it up, but I think there should be data to prove that that can be enough. And I am getting back to a place where I'm creating to express as opposed to monetize, or to create from a place to like share and discuss and advocate versus monetize. And I really believe that I don't know, with all of the corporate marketing environments I've been in, I feel like even so many organizations and brands and leaders see success from monetization and then convince you and everyone else that that's the only way to succeed. Where, again, when you're walking around the Louvre or Musée d'Orsay, you're seeing all of these painters who were simply expressing themselves. And they are very much considered acclaimed and successful. And so when it comes to creativity, with all the ramblings I just did, when it comes to creativity, again, I'm trying to remember that there is not one path to success. And I also think that if I want to have a sustained career while like being creative and sharing what I'm creating, it has to come from a place of expression and health. And like, I just really believe it is the key to longevity in a creative career or pursuit. And those are my thoughts that I wanted to share today about creativity. It's amazing how one simple sentence that someone can say to you can just lead to like self-reflection like this. And that's why I wanted to share about it, because I'm sure there are people listening that can relate to what I'm saying, but also it's hard to be an artist and creative in this world. It always has been. And I just want to remind those who feel like they were built to create and make and share that one, success can still happen, but also what does it look like to, like, how do you define success with your creativity? I guess that'll be my closing thought too for myself, because it's like, when I'm making something, is the end goal monetization, perception, a call to action, whatever? Or is it, did I express myself? Did I create something real? Did I share my story or the story of someone else? And I just think that that's what confuses a lot of like narrow-minded thinkers in terms of creativity and marketing, because so many successful creators, even online, Morgan Harper Nichols comes to mind when I think of this, where she was expressing herself so courageously and sharing the stories of others so courageously. And like, look at her now. Cue Selena Gomez. But I just think it's not talked about enough that being who you are, being creative and focusing on the expression of what you're creating, like, really is enough. And of course, there's a lot of like different expectations to be juggled around with that. But if we're talking about solely not burning out and nurturing your relationship with creativity and what you create, I think that question of what does it look like to make something from a place of expression as opposed to monetization is something I'm going to be thinking about for a while. But thank you guys for listening. I would love to know your thoughts. Share this episode and let me know what you think. Follow at Genuinely Care About You on YouTube and Instagram. And the TikTok I've posted nothing on. But I want to hear your thoughts about this. If you relate, if you have an opposing opinion, I'm curious. But I hope you had a wonderful Valentine's Day, if that's something you were celebrating, or Galentine's Day, Palentine's Day, whatever you were doing. And I will see you next week.